Hey, what's up? This is TJP, and you're listening to the 3 Count Podcast.
When in it, an unbelievable weight that you might hate, but you can't even.
During high class, we find that drag ball at.
Now
Welcome everybody to another great edition of the 3 Count Podcast presents Now Entering the Ring. I'm your host, Clifford Red Dog Miller. You know, the Sherpa, the man who leads you up this mountain, this thing called wrestling. It's ridiculous. We're headed to the peak, but it's never about me. It's always about who's entering the ring. So who's entering the ring today? You see this man right here. He may not be familiar to you guys because, you know, he's not quite a wrestler, but he is this. He is a writer, a musician, a podcaster, a director, a producer. My longest running best friend, period. I know you guys know Lou. Lou came after this man right here. If you guys don't know, now you're about to find out that he is an associate producer for Zack Snyder's Justice League. That's right. He is that man. He was one time known as E-Scorp, but he is my friend, the biggest, the baddest boy around, Antonio Padilla.
Hello. Welcome to me anyways. I'm so used to being the host here. I'm welcoming people. This isn't even my show. So, thank you. Thank you for that intro. That was lovely. Great energy, man. Great energy.
Yo, so for a lot of people who don't know, Antonio and I actually have a show that's called Nerds at a Round Table. We just talk a lot about comics and movies and TV news and casting news, and we have TV time where we talk about our favorite TV shows that we're currently watching. It is a trip. If you guys don't get a chance to, go check it out, Nerds at a Round Table, or you can follow us on Twitter at Real Nerds _Real Nerds.
Oh. Real Nerds _. Yep. And you could like us on Facebook, facebook.com/Real Nerds of the Round Table. Yeah, Cliff's right. We have a podcast, Nerds of the Round Table. You can watch us on YouTube. You can find us anywhere. If you're listening on the audio, anywhere podcasts are available, so you can find us. But yeah, Cliff and I, like you said, man, I was doing the math right before the show. You realize it's what, 25 years at this point?
Yeah.
25. Yeah, that's how long Cliff and I have known each other, man. It's crazy. It's crazy. But yeah, Cliff, thank you for finally inviting me on your show.
Yeah,
I've been waiting.
It's funny though, because when I started the show up, right, like the idea of it was like, let's just focus on like wrestlers and talk to them and ask them for advice. And like the more like the show progressed, I was like, dude, I have so many weird connections to other people who can help build things to make it better, right? So if you're into writing stories, but you're not quite sure how you want a storyline to fit in the wrestling world, I have a friend for that. If you need someone who can help you build a character, I have a friend for that. And I was like, how do I not utilize these connections more often?
You know, that's funny. That's funny because when I talk to people that I grew up with or whatever, you know, friends from back home, Cliff, and I talk about like everything I'm doing now, it's like, yeah, I have really cool friends that I've made in the last, 5-10 years, whether it's musicians or writers or, just actors, actresses, directors. It's crazy. Like, who'd have thought like two boys like us from Nebraska would end up doing what we're doing, you know what I mean? So it's crazy. I understand exactly what you're going through. It's like, yeah, if I can reach out to someone I know, why not? Why not?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And like even like on the podcast, right? Like we've had like
Mm-hmm.
so people know like here on this show, like we've had guys who've been on WWE for like 20 plus years, and we've had guys who are just starting out in the business as well, or in the sport. We've had guys who make gear, and then we've had guys who like make theme songs. Like we brought all sorts of different people on the show. It's been crazy. And even for our podcast, dude, we brought on like one of the coolest YouTubers, two of the coolest YouTubers of all time, like on our show. And like just those little connections that we're able to use and utilize and like connect with people. It's been a trip, man. So I think about like the world that we kind of built, because like, just to be open, like I graduated with a class of 39 kids, and some people can't even fathom that idea. Like, just mind blown by it. And I've known you, like, I mean, you and for those who don't know, I have a sister. But y'all was in the same grade together.
Yeah, that's insane. And it's like, yeah, like you're talking about like how small our classes were, and it's like, you talk to people who came from like big cities or whatever, and they're like, wow, that was a small class. Like, yeah, I'm in a small town,
Yeah.
small. But yeah, no, it's I never take for granted sort of how lucky, or how blessed, however you want to say, someone like you or I are. Like you said, like we've had so many great people on Nerds of the Round Table that it's insane. It's like I still can't believe that we had someone like Aaron Schoenke on the show. Like that's insane. And I was telling the story the other day about how Brad, the DC Universe geek. If you don't know who he is, go check him out on YouTube. He's awesome. I was telling the story about how I even like got into contact with him, and I was like, isn't that crazy? That is like the weirdest story ever. And then all of a sudden he was on the show, and like he's still like a great friend. You know what I mean? Like not even joking, like unprompted, he sent me a happy birthday message. And I was like, yo, thanks, man. Like, thank you. That means a lot to me. So yeah, shout out to Brad. He's a real one. So
Yeah,
yeah.
it's been insane. And then like, people are gonna ask, they're gonna be like, so
Uh-oh.
why did you
I think
bring?
Cliff froze.
Oh, did I?
Yeah, oh, you're good though. You're good.
Okay. So people are gonna ask, they're gonna be like, so why would Cliff bring on his best friend on the show, right? And
Mhm.
it's simple, right? As I mentioned at the top, right? He's an associate producer for Zack Snyder's Justice League, and not only that, but Antonio has put down some serious work and made some serious scripts, and definitely understands the idea not only just behind storytelling, but like character development and character evolutions. And one thing in wrestling that we talk about a lot is like when you build your character, how do you keep your character fresh and connecting with the audience? And that's why I brought him on, was because it's definitely something that he's very familiar with and in his works. So that's why I was like, I'm going to bring him on the show because that's what makes sense. So for those who don't know who you are, can you let the people know who is Antonio Padilla?
All right. Well, where do we start, Cliff? Like you said, I'm a writer. I'm a writer first and foremost. Storyteller, I guess, would be more accurate. I've directed a couple short films, a music video here or there. And like Cliff said, like we've been friends for a very long time. He understands that that's my passion. And yeah, like Cliff said, an associate producer on a small film, little independent film you may have heard of this year, Zack Snyder's Justice League. um, but yeah, no, and I'm I grew up. My first love is comic books and superheroes, right? I mean, obviously, if you see behind me, look at all this. And that's honestly where my passion for storytelling began. Like I remember I was 2 years old. 2 years old. My father took me to see Batman, the Tim Burton Batman, and that like blew my 2-year-old mind. And that's where it started. My fascination with superheroes and comic books in general, but also, like I said, just the idea of storytelling, because I was like, you can do that? Like people get paid to do that? Like that's insane. That's cool. You can create worlds and characters. And like Cliff was saying, he brought me on to talk about character development, story development, how you evolve a character and keep it fresh. And that's something that I really, really try to do, especially if you're doing like long form storytelling and you need to keep your characters. You need to keep evolving them and growing them and building them and keep, like you said, keeping things fresh, which is not always easy to do. It's funny, Cliff. I put a lot of thought into this episode prior to, because I knew you were going to invite me, so I started thinking about it, like specifically wrestling. And for those of you who don't know, like Cliff said, I'm not a wrestler anymore. Cliff and I used to do some, let's say, amateur wrestling back
You
in the
call it what it
day.
is. It was backyard. It was backyard
Backyard
wrestling.
wrestling. Backyard wrestling. We used to do that. We did that a while when we were young and stupid. But the thing about that though is that where was I going with this? I lost my train of thought. Okay. All right, I got it. Okay, so like Cliff and we grew up together. We did some backyard wrestling. I was very much a fan of like WCW, WWF, then WWE. You know, a little bit of TNA here and there, but like I sort of stopped watching a little over 10 years ago. I did tune in, like I said, I tuned in a little bit when Stephen Amell was doing his thing in WWE, but that was about like my only reason. But like I still remember a lot of the stuff from back then, Cliff. Like and thinking about it now in preparation for this episode, I started thinking a lot about things they did back in the day in terms of like character arcs and story arcs. And like you said, like the thing that I remember most and like I want to talk about on the show, the thing that it's kind of a trope, right? And almost sort of a cliche at this point in pro wrestling. The idea of turning a face to a heel and then back, you know, like the switch and whatnot. And I get why you do that because it does switch things up and everything. But it's like, I was thinking about it now and how often it happened back in the day. And it's like, I don't know, man, that seems like kind of a cop out. It just seems like the easy thing to do, you know? And again, like not that there's anything wrong with that. And but just personally, it feels like there are better ways to keep your audience on their toes. You know what I mean? And like we'll get into that later. But yeah, like Cliff was saying, like storyteller, you know, like that's always at the forefront of my mind. Like even music, because yeah, I've recorded music. I record my own music, and music is also just a great form of storytelling. It also helps. I always tell people music is a great way to. It's therapy, you know. It's a great way to get anything you have sort of pent up just out there. Just get it out. And but yeah, there's an element of storytelling to music as well. And it's just, you know, it's like Cliff knows this about me. I am very much about moving things forward rather than keeping things stagnant, because that's where you run into trouble, whether it's a story or a character. So yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like the other thing about like characters is that like you gotta be able to connect with them, right? And I feel like that's something like too, and not just like an audience member to a character, but the actor to the character as well. Because if you're trying to do something and you're forcing that in, like it doesn't come naturally. Like there was something about like, so recently I've gone through like this big change with my character, and I really tried at first, right? So last year I was like, I want to be this like mercenary type. I want to be this hardcore kind of dude who just like lets people know like, hey, this is who I am and this is why I'm going to come through and blah 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 blah. And like people who know me could see like right through and was just like, yeah, Cliff, that's not Cliff, right? So
Yeah.
recently, like I just changed everything on its head, and it kind of started with a match I had with a friend of mine earlier in the year, and it was like I was getting out of the ring and I was like talking with the crowd and like really interacting with them and like joking with them and stuff, and then like everybody kind of noticed that like something was like changing a little bit. But then like when I dropped his latest promo and I was just like in somebody's face about it, and then like the trinkets that I'm adding to it, like afterwards, like everybody was like, I think that's it. That's exactly how it should go. And one of my friends, my trainer actually was like, this is the most natural I've ever seen you and most comfortable with a character that I've ever seen you do. He's like, I think you should take this and just run with it as far as you can go. And I was like, already there, homie.
Yeah, no, you make a good point. Like that is something that's always very important about, like, you know, like connecting to a character, whether it's the audience or whoever is portraying that character. Yeah. And you're right, because if you don't, as the performer, if you don't believe the character, then no one else is going to believe that character either, you know? So yeah, it is it's very difficult to craft a character that anyone can relate to, you know? And I feel like it comes down to motivations. And I remember something that it might have been Benicio del Toro. Someone correct me. I'm doing this like it's our show again, but someone correct me. But someone asked him about characters he's played during his career, you know, whether it was villains or whatever. And he said something that stuck with me ever since. And it was, and I'm paraphrasing here, but what he said is, I don't have to agree with the character. I just have to understand the character. And it's like, okay, I get it. That makes everything really clear. It's like, yeah, you don't have to agree with everything the character does or says. You just have to understand why. The understanding, the motivation, understanding motivation is key to relating to a character, whether it's the performer or the audience. That's something that even villains, and I feel like that's kind of the slippery slope you get into with villains, is if you make them too relatable, then people are more or less rooting for the villain. And again, like, nothing wrong with that, but there's a point where, I don't know, there's a point where the villain stops being a villain and becomes more of an anti-hero. You know what I mean? So it's tricky. It's tricky. But yeah, you're right, Cliff. I didn't. I'm glad you said something, because I didn't want to say anything. But I watched some of your stuff back in the day, and I was like, this is a cool idea for a character. I'm just not sure if Cliff's heart is in it, because I was watching the way you were selling it when I was like, I don't know, man. But I didn't want to say anything because you're my boy, and I was like, I don't know, maybe he's just trying to find his footing here. I don't know.
Yeah, it was definitely that. And then like a lot of people like ask like different questions, like why did I choose? Like first, like my favorite question is why the red dog? And I just tell everybody, I was like, listen, man, I'm just gonna be honest, my name's Clifford. Like that's just what starts it. And
That's where
everybody's
it
like,
comes from.
oh, I get it. I get it now. I was like,
Yeah.
and then people ask like, well, why the mercenary? I was like, well, I was military. Like, oh, like,
Yeah.
so why black and red? I was like, because I like Deadpool. There's a reason for everything. I mean, other than the fact that my name was Red Dog, like, and it only made sense to wear red and black. But no, yeah, there's a reason for everything. But I was like, I'm just not gonna like spell it out for people. Like, just you can ask, but
Yeah.
you'll know the answer as soon as you ask it. It just makes sense. And then it's like,
Okay.
and then how do I make it my own? Well, I me personally, like everybody knows, like once you get to know me, like I don't shut up. Like I'm just the complete like I'm a complete tool and a complete dick. And I'm just like, yeah. I was like, and this is exactly how I'm gonna be, cranked up to 10. Like,
Yeah.
like I was like, and I want people to be able to connect with that because I can be that guy that's like, hey, like this is me, the red dog, ready to take command. But why? I was like, I want to be like, I want to be that character, like a Joker type, or like Deadpool, like I said, right? Or even just
Deadpool type.
a Killmonger, right? Just a
Yeah.
character that you connect to, and even though he's the bad guy, people are like, I kind of like him though.
Yeah. No, and like, it makes a lot of sense to me. Just it, I saw the character, mercenary type. I was like, that makes sense. Cliff was in the military. That makes a lot. Like you were saying, like everything about it made sense where it came from, especially since, like, I know you. I know I've known you my whole life at this point. But yeah, no, like everything made sense, and that's sort of the thing about storytelling. Like everything has to have its own internal logic, right? Everything has to have make sense. It has to come from somewhere. Like you can't have anything that's superfluous. Like if something is just there just to look cool or to sound cool or whatever, it's like, yeah, maybe it's cool, but if there's no real purpose for it there, just go ahead and just cut that out. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I always joke about it too, where I was like, I always talk about, I was like, everything that's like getting added to it. If it makes it look cool, great. I'm gonna stick with it. But like I wear a mask now, but I don't wear it to the ring. I wear, it's there, but I don't wear it I don't wear it in a match. I just wear it like to the ring. And they're like, well, why would you want a mask? I was like, easy, because the realization that is the moment that that mask comes off, the shutting up does not end. It just goes. Like, I think about it because okay, so full transparency for everybody. Uh, we covered this, and I know this episode is going to come out way after something that we've talked about already, but it's similar to how we talked about Army of the Dead, right? I want everything in my gear and as well as me to have multiple storylines, but they all make sense, and people just like
Mhm.
flow with it. And so it's something that like I've like worked and trinked and clicked and pushed and then threw out and broken and reassembled. So I'm like, everything has to make sense for the audience to be like, oh, he has pretty much everything on like you can see it, just everything that's there. you know, from the tattoos to the gear to his boots to the mask, the hat, everything, because it's gonna say something. And then I'll be real too. The other reason why I wanted to go with the Red Dog is because everybody from my elementary to my junior high, I know you guys used to make fun of me, and I remember how you guys used to make fun of me, and I just want everything with my name on it to say Red Dog. It's a
That's
bitter thing, like getting bullied all through elementary school, and then just being like, I know, I know, I know. And the great joke is that now when you talk about me, you're gonna be like, ah, yeah, you see what Cliff does now? Yeah, he calls himself Red Dog. We totally just we messed that up pretty bad.
no, and like that, dude, that itself is a story arc. You know, like talking about story arcs like that itself. You took something that people used against you, like mocked you, made fun of you, and you owned it. And now that's your brand, man. That's your thing. Like that's what you're using to make a living off of. Like, yeah, what a great way to throw it back in the faces of all those people that made fun of you. You know what I mean? Like that's fantastic, man. You can't write that. I mean, you can, but like for it to play out in real life like that, like, that's the stuff that awards are made out of. So
I can't wait. I can't
that's
wait to see
great.
that. And the Red Dog Lifetime Achievement Award will go to.
Oh yeah,
Oh man,
we're laughing about it now, but you just
one
wait.
day.
One day.
It was funny because like I was working out and my trainer like happened to look up and he saw because like on our screen we have like our names that'll pop up and mine just says Red Dog. He's like,
Yeah.
why do you have Red Dog on everything? I was like, I have Red Dog on everything the same reason why Oprah has her name on everything. I want you to know that I'm there.
Yep.
But
Yep.
all right, so we did establish that you were a wrestling fan. So I'm just curious, like, who were some of your favorite wrestlers and why were they your favorites?
Oh man, this is funny because uh, over on Nerds. So for anybody who doesn't know, over on Nerds is the Round Table, we do a series called Secret Origin, right? Where we bring on guests from the industry, whether it's writers, directors, YouTubers, actors, like whoever, you know. And I think it's still our most recent episode of that series, where I had fellow filmmaker Alicia McClendon on there, and we started talking about wrestling, right? Because again, it's a common thread. It's just weird. You find commonalities with these people, whether it's grew up as a fan of wrestling, right? Video games, or even just like the same taste in music or movies or whatever. It's bizarre. Makes sense, but it's weird when you first confronted with it. So her and I started talking about wrestling and how we kind of grew up, like that was our thing, right? And her and I started discussing like who was our favorite. And the funny thing was, Cliff, and again, I don't know if you saw that episode or not, because Cliff was not on that episode. But she asked me, and I was like, oh, right away, Jeff Hardy. And she immediately was like, Jeff Hardy was my favorite too. And I'm like, there it is. There it is. And we went on a whole thing about like why he was our favorite, right? Because like the high flying, right? Just the risk taking he took. And it's admirable, and I mean, like, I know, like, we all know now that he struggled with like addiction and whatnot, but it's like that doesn't diminish everything he did. It's like honestly, it makes it even more like astonishing that he still took those risks and like put his life on the line every time he entered the ring. And Cliff and I talked about this over on Nerds, where it's like there are people who will criticize us and make fun of us, like, oh, you guys like wrestling, it's fake, right? And we're like, yeah, but that doesn't mean that these people who do it, there's still a risk, and like it still requires a level of athleticism to do it. And like like it sure, the matches might be predetermined or whatever, but that doesn't mean these people aren't out here like breaking their backs every night for your entertainment. So it's like, screw you. Like, you want to make fun of like pro wrestlers, like these guys who are putting their lives on the line every night for the entertainment of millions of people around the world? Like, get out of here with that. You know what I mean? But like that's sort of the thing about like Jeff Hardy, is like just seeing him take all those risks, right? like jumping off of ladders through tables and like, you know, and still like hurting himself every time he did it, but still finding it inside of him to like get back up and do it again. It's like that always blew me away, like when I was growing up, and even more so as an adult when I realized like, yeah, it's not easy to do that, you know, especially the older you get. The older you get, it gets harder to do that. So no, yeah, like Jeff Hardy was always one of my favorite. I was always a fan of like the high flyers, you know that, Cliff. Like even like the luchadors, like Rey Mysterio, La Parca, guys like that, you know. But like, I mean, I always had an affinity for like Triple H because like his work ethic, man. Like to this day, we talk about like, you know, probably one of the hardest working wrestlers in all of WWE, you know, or at least back then. Like I sort of lost track. I don't know what's going on in the WWE right now. But back in the day, man, like watching Triple H, like just work, do the work over and over every night. Like that was admirable, you know. And Cliff, come on, man. Like you and I are both 90s boys. We grew up in the 90s. Obviously, like D-Generation X, that was my thing. Right? Yeah. I wanted to come in when you introduced me. I wanted to come in doing it. But I was like, not enough room in here for me to come in with that kind of energy. So but yeah, man, I was a big into the attitude era of WWE. Again, WWF back in the day, but WWE now.
Yeah,
But yeah,
made that crazy
that's my
transition.
deal.
Yeah, it made that
Yeah.
crazy transition in there. You know, it's funny, man, because you bring up like Triple H, who like not he doesn't actively compete still. Like
Mhm.
he's still like he does every once in a while. He'll come back for a match or two. But yeah, you're right though, man. Like a guy like Hunter, right? Just the way his work ethic is ridiculous, and like he continues
Yeah.
to like put in work, and his character continues to like change even now. Like the game, like whether he's you know. Um, the guy that's hired to knock somebody out or be a commissioner or just come back in and just have one more match or it's kind of whatever, get pulled out
Mhm.
of retirement because, Dave Batista is dragging around his best friend, Ric Flair, across the floor. Like
Yeah.
there's all sorts of like crazy stuff like happens. But then like, you're right. Like Jeff Hardy is definitely one of those guys that you look at and you're like, damn, dude, like a guy who, you know, even though he's still always in a recovery process of like substance abuse, like he's always the guy that's like when he's in the ring telling stories, you're always paying attention because you know what's going to happen, but you're still excited to see him like it was the first time you saw him, back in the 90s. Because even now,
Yeah.
like, man, he's still wrestling now and he's still doing it at a really high level, and it's like, bro, like I know, like from your shoulder injury to your knee injury, from like 18 and 19, like you're still doing this, man, and it is insane to think about.
It is. Yeah. It's nuts. Like the amount of times like these people get in. Like again, like talking about Triple H. I remember. I don't remember what year it was, but like he suffered like a real bad injury. Like, and I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. Like, and they even like sort of documented his road to recovery, and then like his big like comeback that year was like this big thing that everybody celebrated because it's hard for these guys to go out there and put their lives on put their health and their safety on the line like that, and so like you're rooting for them to come out of it on the other side and be okay. You know, it's that's a form of storytelling, and that's real life. You know, like the injuries are not fake, that's real. I mean, unless it's a story thing where it's like, oh, they've been injured and they're going to take some time off, but really it's because Dwayne Johnson had to go film The Rundown or whatever. Like that's obviously a fake injury, storyline or whatever. But like I said, like I remember that when Triple H was injured, and like it was almost documentary style where they were presenting you with like, well, here he is, this is the stage of his recovery, and he's in physical rehab right now. And just I remember just everybody sort of rallied behind him. We were all rooting him on, waiting for him to come back, and he came back and it was awesome. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
it's nuts.
So for those who don't know like what we're talking about, or even for those who do, it's just nice to kind of remember. We're talking about the
Mhm.
quad injury that he had,
Yeah.
the quad tear. And he had that surgery, and I remember like after the surgery, I remember like every 2 weeks, every week, they would do like the update report on what's going on with Triple. And I remember they stopped doing it after like 3 months. And I feel like they kind of knew, like, all right, we're gonna engage him. He's probably gonna be back in about like 8 months, so we just won't say anything and he'll surprise fans. But I remember like them taking the angle of like the ruler and like bending it and then like straightening it back out and then showing like how far like the progression was going of like him being able to walk again. And you're right, man. It is one thing that's very true about fans of just media in general. Like, we're all huge fans of comeback stories. It doesn't matter, even if it's in wrestling or you're talking about in movies, right? So, you know, everybody's talking about like they loved Endgame because it felt like a comeback story for the Avengers, or they love the Mighty Ducks because it's a comeback story for the Ducks, right? They love all these like aspects of it. They love the Justice League, right? Because, oh God, what are they gonna do? They're gonna come back and defeat the guy. Like, everybody loves a comeback story. And then in a real life situation, you look at people like God, I was just thinking about you know, like Nancy Kerrigan when she got injured in the 90s with the crowbar incident, right? Or the pipe incident. And people were like waiting for her to come back. They were like, come back, yeah, she's gonna do it. And you know, and she did. Nancy Kerrigan, we love you. But it's just crazy thing. Or you see someone like Robert Downey Jr., who like had this huge addiction and just tanked his career, went to prison, and then came back and did Iron Man. And now no one can ever think about like Tony Stark's being played by anybody other than Robert Downey Jr. It's, you think about those things, man. It's like, it's crazy, and we're all fans of it because we just want to see people succeed in life. We just naturally want to see that happen. There might be some people out there who are like, I don't give a fuck if they fail or not, but that's neither here nor there. But for the majority of us, we love good comeback stories.
Oh yeah, and it's funny because, like, you know, we were talking about it over on Nerds of the Round Table. We were even talking about how 2021 is kind of Zack Snyder's year. You know, again, not to keep bringing it back around, but it's like, you know, everything that happened to him back in 2017 and like how horrible that was, and for him to sort of see this vindication, what with Zack Snyder's Justice League coming out and it being the big success that it is and continues to be, and then like back to back right off of that, he had Army of the Dead, which is like the biggest movie Netflix has ever had. You know what I mean? And so it's like, good for you, man. Like, yeah, like that's what we were all rooting for, you know? And so you're right. Like, it's the thing where someone who sort of suffers all these terrible losses and like people just keep wanting to beat them down, right? And to see that person never give up and sort of just persevere and keep pushing and then to come back and win, you know, it's inspiring. So, you know, that's why I keep talking about Zach, you know. And again, like, it's like, I know everybody's like, well, it's just because you have this connection. It's like, yeah, but even if I didn't, I probably still would, you know, because again, it's just that great story, because like, he didn't deserve any of that terrible stuff that happened. He really didn't. And so for him to sort of experience what he has this year, it's like, that's, you know, that's a story in and of itself.
Yeah, and for those who don't know, like, go check it out. You can actually check out the episodes too, Nerds Around Table, with I think we called it it was the release of Snyderverse episode. Massive, the whole deep dive into it. It was a great episode. Actually, you did it by yourself, and it was like I was listening to it the whole time, and I was wrapped up, and I was like, man, this is insane. Like, some of the stuff that was going on. So if you guys don't know, go check that episode out. It's very cool. But I do have to ask, man, what inspired you to start writing your first script?
My first script. This is actually an interesting story. I remember the first script that I ever wrote, believe it or not, it wasn't even like a screenplay. Like, for a movie, it was a radio play. Like, that's how, you know, I was a kid. I was a child. I think it was either in the 3rd grade or the 4th grade. And I wrote it in between like lessons, you know, because I would finish my work real fast. And then I was just bored in between. So I was thinking about stuff that I wanted to do just to keep myself busy. So I started writing a radio play. Again, like, because that's just whatever reason. I was a kid and I thought, oh, that'd be a cool thing, right? And I was very inspired by just old school pulp detective stories like Dick Tracy or, stuff like that. And because like, as a kid, like that's cool. That's cool stuff. You grow up watching like, like for me, growing up watching Bogey or Cagney with my grandpa and my grandma. And I was always interested in those kind of like film noir detective stories. And again, it was just that thing where I was a kid and like that, those old movies and like coupled with like pulp detective stories like Dick Tracy or even The Shadow if you want. And I wanted to write that. I wanted to write something like that. So I would sit there and I don't even remember how old I was. 7. I would just sit there and I was writing it in my notebook on paper, right? Pen and paper. And I would write it out, like there's direction and then dialogue and then character descriptions, dialogue. And, I didn't know how to write a script back then. I was making it up as I went along. And the weird thing is when I was older and I saw how scripts are actually written, I wasn't that far off. It wasn't that far off. But yeah, so I would sit there and write it and, and again, like I'm sure if I don't know where it is. That thing's probably sitting in a landfill somewhere at this point. But if I found it and I was to look at it now, I'm sure I'd be really critical of it and harsh. Like there's no real story arc here. This is just a collection of ideas, And I'm sure that like, me looking at it, I'd be like, well, there's something here. It just needs to be more cohesive. But yeah, that was the first thing I ever wrote. But the inspiration it really was just the desire to tell a story that I would want to experience, and I thought maybe other people might want to. And it was funny because I would show other kids in my class, because they would be like, what are you writing? And I was just this dumb detective thing, and they would, can I see it? And I'm like, sure, and I'd let them read it. And I remember there was one kid who I won't name because I think you and I both know this person. But I won't name him. It was funny because he actually gave me a couple like ideas. He was like, hey, what about this? Like, what if he has this friend who does this? And I was like, that's a pretty good idea. I'll put that in here. And I did. It was a thing. And honestly, that was where I sort of learned. And again, like I learned all this really young, but I learned the importance of collaboration. And Cliff, like you and I collaborated on a couple things that I worked on, but that was sort of the start of it because I understood immediately like, oh, someone else might be able to look at something I'm working on and say, hey, maybe try this here, and it could work. It could end up being the saving grace of the whole thing. So that's where again, at a very early age, I was writing and learning all these lessons about like collaboration and not shutting out other people's ideas right away just because it's your vision or whatever. It's your vision, it's your idea. That doesn't mean other people can't come in with a fresh set of eyes and see something. They might notice something you missed, and then they'll be like, hey, this might not be the best idea, and then you go back and look at it and like, oh, you're right, that would be really bad. So then you go back and change it, right? Or they say, hey, this is great, but you have no payoff for that, so maybe over here you do this, and then you're like, oh yeah, that makes a lot more sense. So yeah, man, like just wanting to tell stories, man. That's always been my inspiration for anything I do, whether it's writing stories, short stories, scripts, screenplays, directing, music. It always comes from a place of just wanting to tell a story that I think is interesting and that I think other people might find interesting as well.
Well, you bring up like a lot of great points, right? Like it came off of like an inspiration from a set item, right? So like radio broadcasts, I had mentioned like Dick Tracy. For those of you who don't know, please go do some research. Google it. It's Dick Tracy's so lit. Anyway, but you talk about like the inspiration of the idea that it came from, and then you kind of like built up like a world around it, and then you talk about collaborations. Like those are like all three massive things because you've hit all the great points. And it's like when because like for me, I know like one thing that I've kind of had struggles with was the idea that everybody kept telling me that I was in. And it was like, I don't know, when I first started trying out the character that I was like really working with, I kept getting told like that's not how the character would talk. I'm like, this is my character. This is how I
Right.
would talk.
Right.
Like, and I was like, I'll try it your way, but if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, and it's fine.
Yeah.
I was like, but at least we gave it the college try.
Yeah.
But you're right. Like collaboration is huge because everybody's gonna have an idea and something's gonna click, right? I know I've had other people kick ideas out to me that like my character was like brainwashed and like now he's like Winter Soldier-ish, and I was like, it's not kind of what I'm looking for, but I like the idea. I like the idea. I like the premise of where it could go in the future. That could be something. But I was like, right now, I was like establishing how fucking crazy this dude is. It's definitely gonna have to be the way that it works.
Yeah.
But yeah,
And I like that. I like that you were saying it's like that idea because it's not a bad idea, but it's like, yeah, maybe save that for later, because you could always use that as your out, right? Like if you decide, like, I don't know, Cliff, are you face or are you heel?
so currently my character is kind of a tweener. He's not really face. He's not heel. He's an
See,
anti-hero.
this is where it comes in handy because if at some point down the line you want to make a definitive face or heel, you can always use that as your explanation as to what it is, as to why. So it's like, like maybe someone tosses you an idea and it's like, that's a good idea. I don't know if we're going to use it right now, but save, like Beetlejuice, save that guy for later. There's always a chance you could use it some other time. You know what I mean? So it's like, yeah, I always try to be open to other people's ideas. And like you're saying, it's like, sometimes it's like, I don't know. We'll give it a shot. We'll see. We'll see if it works. Like we'll do it the way it's written or whatever. And then we'll give it a shot the way you said, and we'll see which one works. Because you don't really know until you're there. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah, and it's something I was told is like, yeah, like if I want to be that serious guy, like, yeah, it'll fit. But if I want to do this, I'm a lot more comfortable with this. And they're like, all right, well, let's give that a go. We'll see what happens. And the more like I started kicking, and this is one thing that I really kind of wanted to touch with you on too, because it kind of goes into my next question is about developing character and like keeping it involved, right? So it's kind of like establishing the why, like why does your character do this or why does he want to do that? Like you had mentioned earlier about understanding your character and really like driving like the point of who he is or who she is, because I know we have female wrestlers, who they are and how they're getting to their next destination. And it's one thing I was very curious I want to talk to you about is like when you develop your character, like what do you look for to evolve that character to the next level?
This is a good question because this is a thing a lot of writers or creatives sort of miss a lot in terms of character development. So aside from developing a great backstory or history for your character, right? Because that will inform everything about your character, like why they do what they do, the choices that they make, right? Like everything revolves on history and past. But also the thing you need to ask yourself about a character, specifically about character, two things. What do they want and what do they need, right? So, and I'm going to boil everything down to its basic thing, right? Like if you're a wrestler and your character, like what do they want? Again, this is very basic because I don't know what your character wants, whatever. But like say a character wants to be the world heavyweight champion, right? That's what he wants. So that's what he's trying, that's what he's going after. That's his motivation. But what does that character need? You know what I mean? Like maybe that's not what this character needs to feel complete. Maybe what they need is instead of winning that title, instead of winning that belt, right? Maybe it's just, it's the Rocky thing, right? Maybe it's just to prove to people, to prove to the world that they can go the distance. And the victory isn't really what they need. Maybe it's just getting to the championship match, right? And going the distance, right? Like not getting knocked, pinned in like 3 minutes. Maybe it's having the biggest knockdown drag out fight the world has ever seen. And the world is rooting against you at the start. But by the time it's over, you've won the audience over because you've proven that you have what it takes. Maybe you didn't win, but you gave them a show they weren't expecting, you know? So again, it's want versus need, and that will always make the biggest difference in terms of developing your character. The idea that what they want, they realize that's not what they need. That's not what they needed, you know. That's always something that I'm always looking at in terms of character development. And again, like this goes back to a script I was working on for a project that I know I spoke to you about, and I've mentioned it vaguely on Nerds of the Roundtable podcast, but it was a script I was working on for a project where I had three main protagonists, right? And one of them was their motivations were, it's like, what do I want? Well, I want to be the best. I want to be the best who has ever done this thing, right? But the lesson they need to learn is that being the best isn't going to fulfill them the way that they thought it would. What they need is to be surrounded by other people that will make them better than they are. You know what I mean? And so the sort of the lesson, and again, like I can't really get into it because I don't know how much I can talk about at this point, but the idea, it's like a competition, right? So it's kind of like wrestling, right? It's a competition, everybody's competing in it, and this person wants to be the best in the competition, but they sort of in the climax of the thing, they realize that it's like, well, during this whole thing, as much as of a snob as I've been to everybody and wanting to be the best, I realized that these other people have been looking out for me and they've been elevating me. So I need to make a choice right now. Do I continue down the path of wanting to be the best and winning this thing and sacrificing the friends and family that I've made this whole time? You know, and that's what it all comes down to. It comes down to choices, the choices that these characters make in the pursuit of what they want versus what they need, you know? So.
Oh, that's great, man. I like it, and it's we could talk more offline about like what I want, what I need. So I'm gonna talk about it
Sure,
here
for sure.
because all you
For
guys
sure.
know, you don't deserve to know that. That's not how this works.
No.
That's not how the
Spoilers. I'm not
storytelling
gonna give you
works.
spoilers.
You get no spoilers. There's nothing
No
there for you.
spoilers too.
Just like, oh man, so we did an episode and I was so worried that I was gonna talk about things that happened with a certain movie that we covered, and I was like, oh. And stop. I had to stop myself so many. So
Oh,
we've talked about like the your character needs to have a want and also has to have like a need, right? Of what
yes.
to balance themselves out. So as like the need or the want changes and what they need has to keep evolving with what that want is. So like for
Yeah.
me, I know like my first thing was like I just wanted to get into a pro wrestling ring. That's just what I wanted. And then I got there and I realized like I kind of need this. You know? Like just and that's just that's me. That's me shooting on it. That's just me being real. That's not even like that's not even my character. That's just me.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And I was gonna say it's like that. What I'm talking about is like story. Story. But like, your real life is very different.
Yeah.
Like sometimes your want and your need are the same thing. So.
Yeah, it's been like crazy because I was thinking about this too the other day. I was like, and it's something I just like recently learned right through like a video, and it was something that actually Dave Bautista said was he's just like, I just want people to remember me that I enjoyed everything I did in my life and I went for everything I wanted in my life. And I'm like, dude, that's exactly the journey that I'm on. Like that's the journey I've been on. Like
Yeah.
everything I've done in my life. I'm like, yo, dude, like that's my why. That's my why. I want people to look back. I want my daughter to look back and be like, like there was not a thing that my dad looked and said, you know what? he's gonna do it. Like, he wants to do it. I remember,
Yeah.
because I remember as a kid, and you can attest to this. Like, that one time I wanted to be like a pro football player, and I want to be a pro basketball player, and I realized I was like,
Yeah.
those aren't. Those are just things that I think are cool, but that's not me. That's not what I want to do. It's like, what I want to do is I want to get into wrestling. Like, I've been a pro wrestling fan forever, and
Yeah.
from our backyards to the to the current rings that I'm in now. Like, I was like, yo, like, I realized, like, I've achieved my dream of being a pro wrestler, or getting into the ring and being a wrestler. And even if you want to call it an indie wrestler, I don't really care. All right. But just getting into a ring in front of people and performing, like, that was my goal. Now, like, now I've actually hit my dream. It's like, all right, well, now I gotta dream bigger. And that's, for me now, that's my want. And how do I gotta find my need too to get there.
Exactly. Exactly. And that is like the perfect way to explain like how to keep your character evolving, right? Because like, and that's just you talking about your real life, but like that can be your character, that can inform how you develop a character, because you know you have your first story, and this goes into like we talk about like movie sequels or TV seasons, right? You always have to have another goal, right? So like even after they've achieved whatever they have previously, all right, we're going into another one. All right, so what do they want this time? What do they need this time? It's again, it changes, but you can't forget where they came from and what they've already achieved, what they've already accomplished. And yeah, it's just like in real life, man. You learn a lesson and you're like, okay, I have to keep that in mind while I move forward. You know what I'm saying? So it's yeah, it is very much like real life, but storytelling obviously is much more dramatized. It's and romanticized, if we're being honest. But
Yeah.
no, it's crazy because like talking about you realize like I do remember like in high school you played football, you played basketball, you did wrestling in high school. I mean, Greco-Roman wrestling, but and I remember like you doing all that, and even I was like, I don't know if that's for Cliff though. Like I understand you, I understood you enjoyed it, but even I was like, I don't know if that's what he's meant to be doing. And it's likewise like me, like I know I went through phases where I was like, you know, I want to do this, I want to do that, or whatever. Like, but at some point, it all comes back around to what is the thing I love? What is the thing I really want to do? And for me, it's storytelling, whether it's filmmaking or music. Just being creative. Like that's the thing I love. And wrestling, we're talking about it. Obviously, there's creative elements to that as well. So it's like it's funny, Cliff, because I recently met someone, a fellow storyteller, filmmaker, and just like anytime you meet someone new, you start talking to them and you want to get to know more about them. We got around to the question like, so why do you want to do this? Why do you want to make films? Why do you want to tell stories? And this person's answer was the exact same answer as mine, which made me like smile so big. But the answer was, well, and again, this is 100% my answer. It was, well, I just want to tell stories, create worlds, and if I can distract people from whatever problems they might be experiencing in real life, whether it's stress from their job or family trouble or whatever, if we can distract them for 2 hours at a time and give them some enjoyment, that's really all we want. And that's really all I want. You know what I mean? Like because I understand what it's like, for people who may not have the best home life, whether you're a young person, a young kid in school, because that's what it was for me in school. Like Cliff, I was picked on and ridiculed and made fun of for loving the things I loved, superheroes, comic books. But those were my escape. You know what I mean? Like I would go home and read my comic books. There's always a stack of comics on the table. And I would just start reading them. Or Cliff, you'll remember this, man. After school, Batman, the animated series, X-Men, Spider-Man. I would sit there and watch those and just escape into those stories. And that's what I want to do for other generations of kids or even adults. Like I said, like maybe your job sucks, right? And you just want to kind of forget about it for a couple hours. If I can help you forget about it for a couple of hours, that's what I want to do, you know?
Yeah, I
That's it.
remember. I'm not even gonna front. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I have to bring this up because I remember reading one of your pieces for, and people are gonna whatever it is at this point, but your
Right.
Batman high school origin story
Yeah.
was like one of my favorite things like I've ever read in my life, and like it kept me trapped in the world. And I remember like you and I like collabing a little bit back and forth here on there on the subject, but I just remember like so much of it was written out, and I was like, dude, like this makes 100% sense, and it's something that needs to happen. So I was like, this is a story that like can get told, and you can just paint a world. And that is something that you are very very good at. Is just like you you painted this picture, and then you just developed this whole entire world. And I just remember being lost in it, and I remember reading and just feeling like I was Bruce Wayne in high school, and I was like, I'm whooping everybody's ass. Just getting done.
Well, thank you, Cliff. That means a lot to me. And I mean, like, I know you've sort of complimented me on it a bunch in the past, but it's still just like it means a lot to me because yeah, like that's the one I was hinting at earlier. It's like I was writing that, and Cliff was the guy who I'd be like, hey man, like check this out. Like, what do you think here? Like, do you have any ideas for this? And Cliff would help me out. But yeah, it's like I would always just sort of let him read, you know, and like he was sort of the first to tell me stuff like that. Like, yo, man, the way you describe this stuff is insane. You know, it feels like I'm there. And I remember there was a script I wrote after that, and I let someone else read it, and they sort of said the same thing too. They were like, "This passage right here is so descriptive, man. Like, I can picture it so perfectly in my head." And I think, like, yeah, after that, I was like, okay, I think I found what I'm really good at here. So yeah, thanks, Cliff. Thank you.
Yeah, I was like I said, I've always been like appreciative, like all the writings that you put together, and then like the world character building and the world development that you've had. It's been something I've always been like, damn, dude, like this is some shit that has to get done. It has to be put together because like there's just no one out there that is gonna have your vision and gonna tell something the way you want to tell it. And I feel like you specifically just have like this knack of just being able to put a world in the picture that you have in somebody's mind and just locks in. So when I think of like how you develop your characters and like you just said, like it's so weird because I never thought about that as far as like a want and need kind of process. I've always understood it as like who, what, where, when, and why, and
Yeah.
then how your character is gonna get there. And then just like you just put it out there like your character has to have a want and your character has to have a need, and you just got to understand like what that is and then balance it out. It's like, yo, bro, like I see it in my face, and then like as we're talking, like the whole world is like building around me. So when people see me, if I'm drifting off and I'm looking up, like it's because I see like what my character is looking at. And I was like, bro, like the things I start thinking about, I'm like, this is gonna be ridiculous. Like the things I could come up with on this like journey that I'm about to put myself on is wild. And it's just because of little like ideas like that. Like it's things that you say, and I'm just like, man, this is gonna be crazy. My last heavy hitting question for you though is gonna
All
be,
right.
what is so we've already kind of talked about the wants and needs, but what is some more advice that you would give to people who are trying to evolve their characters? Because you mentioned it too when you're talking about doing sequels and next seasons.
Yeah, no, I mean that really is that kind of is like the best advice I can give you is to keep evolving your character. Like never forget where they came from, never forget the lessons they learned previously. But then you have to build on top of that. Okay, so they've achieved this. Where do they go from here? What do they want? Now what do they need? You know? So you have to always keep in mind where they came from, right? Never forget the lessons they've learned and all the hardships they've gone through. And then progress them in a way that makes the most sense, and that can also mean, again, like we talked about the switch from face to heel or heel to face. One of the best things that I can sort of give, and it goes back, I was talking about like it kind of became a trope in like the 90s and early 2000s of like the face to heel or the heel to face switch, but it can make sense. Like say you're a heel, right? And your whole story arc is Uh, learning something that you thought was true that wasn't true, right? And that can inform the reason why they might switch from a heel to a face. Because how do they react to the realization that what was driving them was a lie, right? How do they react to that? And how does it inform who they are and who they're gonna be moving forward? You know? And likewise with a face, maybe what made them such a likable person ended up being a lie. And again, that doesn't necessarily have to result in them becoming a heel, but it can, again, that can be your reasoning for it. But also, if you're a face, right, and your whole character, your motivation or whatever, is built on an idea or an event that they believe so much was true, and you find out it's not true. This is how you can test their integrity as a face, as a hero character, right? Like, how do they react to learning that something so integral to the core of their character was a lie, right? Like, how do you react? Like, someone else said this so much better than I ever could. Like, you know, how did they phrase it? I'm paraphrasing here, but like, a person is not made in dwelling on the past or fearing the future. A hero is made in the moment. You know what I mean? So it's like the idea that how they react in the face of doubt or uncertainty will always inform how they move forward. You know? So yeah, like the idea is always to find something that will inform the journey moving forward after a certain chapter has come to an end. You know? I mean, it should go without saying, make it make sense, you know, but that's just for anyone who's just like, oh, I'm just gonna do the most random thing. And look, sometimes that can work, sometimes, but try and give whatever you're doing a sense of verisimilitude. And if you don't know what that word means, that is essentially a built-in logic. Everything has to have its own built-in logic. Like, let's take it back to Superman, right? Everything about Superman has to have his own built-in logic. Like kryptonite. What is kryptonite? Why does it weaken him? Well, it's radioactive pieces of his homeworld. It's like, oh, that makes sense. You know what I mean? So yeah, you can't just present something and be like, this is it. This is why. It has to have a built-in logic. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. So, with that being said, we're going to move on to the second best segment of the Three Count podcast, because the first best segment is the Red Dogs Power Ranking that you can find every Sunday on the Three Count podcast debate show. And this is the Three Count podcast 10 count questions, and Mr. Escorp, aka Antonio Padilla. This is how it works. I'm going to fire off 10 questions at you rapid fast. And yeah, whatever first answer comes to mind, that's your answer.
All right, let's do it.
All right, let's play the game. We're going to put on an imaginary timer for added pressure. Bing! And here we go. Jedi or Sith?
Jedi.
Favorite movie?
The Matrix.
Would you rather be a good guy or a bad guy?
Come on, man. I'm a good guy.
Favorite,
you know this, bro. You know
I know. This. I know all the answers. They don't. So.
Yeah.
Favorite color?
Green.
Night owl or early bird?
Oof, that's a tough one. I mean, in terms of work ethic, I'm an early bird. But in terms of like personal preference, personal life, night owl for sure.
Yeah, actually, you know, it's funny. My wife asked me the same question. I was like, I'm an all dayer. Like, I can get up at 6 a.m. and I'm like, let's go.
I mean, I guess that's my answer too. I'm sort of an all dayer. I do all of
it. All right. Favorite actor?
Oh boy. Again, this is a tough one, man. Like, there are so many If I'm talking like currently,
Yeah, let's go with it.
probably Oscar Isaac. Yeah. But like of all time, like come on, like the greats, Brando, Olivier, De Niro, Christian Bale. That dude's awesome.
That dude is awesome.
Yeah.
I'm gonna ask this question anyway. I know this answer, but Marvel or DC?
DC. But that doesn't mean I don't like Marvel. Come on.
Right.
Come from me in the chat, everybody. I do appreciate Marvel. Cliff can attest that I grew up on Marvel. Marvel's the only thing I got through high school. So
favorite podcast?
oh come on, Cliff.
Yep.
You know the answer. Everybody knows the answer to this.
Yep.
Inside of You with Michael Rosenbaum. No, I mean I love Michael Rosenbaum's podcast, but no, come on, Nerds of the Round Table. Nerds of the Round Table. I am going to give a shout out to the 3 Count though. It's a close race. It's very close. So
I'm very curious because I don't know the answer to this question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Would you rather take Kratos or Spawn?
Spawn.
I mean,
Spawn.
he's,
I'm a 90s boy. Come
yeah,
on.
he's so. I'll be honest, man. Like watching, I went back and watched Superhero Beatdown, or not Superhero Beatdown. I'm sorry, Death Battle. And again, I found myself like cheering for Spawn, but I was kind of like, I hope Kratos pulls this off. But I knew Kratos was gonna lose anyway. But I was like, Kratos, come on, Kratos, you have a great story. All right. Last but not least, my favorite question to ask every single person who comes on this show: favorite curse word.
I mean, I'm inclined to go with, I think everybody's favorite curse word. But honestly, and I don't even know if this counts because it's so tame these days. But just a good damn or damn it
Yeah.
always does it for me. You know, it's so simple, and again, it's so tame compared to everything else. But like, just a well placed one really does it for me.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Actually, that's such a good one too.
Yeah.
Well, that is it for the 3 Count Podcast 10 Count questions. All I need from you, though, Antonio, is to let our viewers and our listeners know where they can find you.
All right. This is my favorite part of every podcast. So, ladies and gentlemen, you can find me on all social media. It's either at Tron Pilgrim or at Tron Pilgrim 87. You will know which one is me. And again, like you can always find me on Nerds of the Round Table, whether it's on YouTube, and Cliff is always there with me. Well, almost always there with me. Almost. Nerds of the Round Table on YouTube. And again, if you're an audio listener, you can find us on every audio podcast platform, whether it's Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, whatever. Like Nerds of the Round Table on Facebook, facebook.com/Real Nerds of the Round Table. You can follow us on Twitter at @RealNerds_. And yeah, also shout out to the home of Nerds of the Round Table, anchor.fm/nerds. That's where it all started. So
that's where it all started when we were like recording it, like through the phone call.
Oh yeah, way back in the day. I say that, but it was 4 years ago. So
we've gone through so many evolutions of this show. It's been It's been ridiculous. But that is it, and that is everything that we have here for the 3 Count Podcast presents Now Entering the Ring, and I'm your host, Clifford Red Dog Miller. As I said, as we lead and earn our way up to the peak of this mountain, I am your Sherpa. That's right, but it's never about me. It's about who's entering the ring, and today we have had Antonio Padilla in the ring with me today. So, guys, you guys know what to do. Tune into the next episode and be there, or you just wait till this episode ends. You wait till the outro happens, and I guarantee one of our videos is going to play next. Peace. What's going on, 3 Count Nation? I'm Clifford Red Dog Miller with the catchphrase. But what I really want you to do right now, go to twitter.com, right? Go over there, find us at the 3count_pod, give us a follow, give us a like, give us a comment. We want to talk to you guys. Go to IG at the 3 Count Pod. Give us a like, give us a follow, leave us a comment. We want to interact with you. Go to youtube.com, give a subscribe, turn the bell on, turn the notifications, leave a comment. We want to talk to you. Go to anchor.fm/the 3 Count Podcast, and in there, you can leave us a message, and we will talk to you. Basically, what I'm trying to tell you is that we want to talk to you. We want to have fun with you guys, and we love listening to what you guys have to say. Also, one thing I need you to do for me, the 3 Count Podcast also has merchandise. Oh, at prowrestlingtees.com/the 3 Count Pod. Please go buy our t-shirts. We love you guys, and we hope you love us too. So show us some support, please.